thank you all so much for joining us today as we explore finding records about Polish minorities. I'll start with a bit of housekeeping. Just a reminder that there is a live chat box where you can send through any questions or comments that you have. We'll be doing our best to answer all your questions, but if we do run out of time, please get in touch with us via emails or our socials. We are also going to send out an email with the recording. So if you'd like to rewatch this video or share it around, feel free to do so. First off, I'd like to introduce our wonderful presenter, Rafael. He is Polaron's senior researcher, backed with a master's degree in history. A fun fact about Rafael is he has always aspired to become an NBA basketball player. His love for basketball and American culture truly runs deep, but not as deep as his love for his history and helping people just like you discover their ancestry records. I also would like to give a warm welcome to Eva. Eva is the proud founder and director of Polaron, and she is a recognized leader in the fields of translations and European citizenship. Many of you might know Eva from our social media or might have had the pleasure of meeting her in person. She regularly presents as lectures and conferences around the world and will be the moderator for this webinar. I would like to pass it on to you, Eva. Thank you all and enjoy.
Thank you so much, Angelo, and welcome everyone this morning or this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are in the world. Today, we're going to be talking about finding records of minorities in Poland. But firstly, I wanted to explain to you, and many of you might already know, but to put us on the same page, what Polish minorities are. So Poland, culturally, linguistically, and religiously, is one of the most homogeneous countries in the world. However, there are 9 recognized minorities under Poland's constitution. And Poland's actually quite strong on protecting their rights of congregation, of being able to practice their faith, teaching language at school. So their rights are protected under the constitution. And Poland recognizes 3 types or 3 categories of minorities. There are 9 national minorities, and these are Belarusians, Czechs, Lithuanians, Germans, Armenians, Russians, Slovaks, Ukrainians, and Jewish people. 4 ethnic minorities, so these are Karaites, Lemkos, Romas, and Tatars. There's about 30,000 Tatars or people of Tatar origins in Poland. And regional linguistic minority, and these are Kashubians. There's another controversial, I guess, minority in Poland. These are Silesians. So people that live to the west of Poland or to the east of German border, and they are not recognized as minority in Poland for all kinds of reasons, but they just aren't. So with that in mind, I'd like to hand over to Rafael now to explain to us where to find records and how to go about looking for records if your family comes from one of those minorities that I've mentioned. Over to you, Rafael.
Thank you, Eva. So I hope you hear me okay. So let's just start, because also today I have only 30 minutes. So I'll do my best to keep the time discipline and to present every information I want to share with you. So as you know, and from just our previous webinars, I used to work before I joined Polaron in the State Archives for years, and a lot of work with finding historical records, of course, in various types of the research projects. Today we'll be talking about various types of the minority records. Thank you, Eva, for this introduction, because it's very important for the people who are looking about the type of the records to understand the Polish history, to learn it about this, about also regional history. We can expect, of course, to find a lot of types of historical sources in the various state archives. Today, of course, in my presentation, I'll be talking only about the documents from the state archives, which in fact for the Polish the minority records, the state archives provide you the most important types of the records we can use for our family research. So I hope, of course, that the presentation is available for all of you, and just start from the first screen with national composition of Poland. According to the census from 1931, it was the second huge census. The first was 10 years before. The map, of course, of the Poland, the pre-war Poland, shows us the areas which on the colors are marked various types of the populations and the nation, with their origin. On the red, of course, the people who declared the Polish nationality. On the yellow, the huge groups of Ukrainians, green, the Belarusians. The blue, of course, is Germans, light blue, Lithuanians. There are also, which maybe on that screen is not visible, but the black points, which usually are mark the place of the cities. There are places which between 25 to 75% or over 75% of those people were the people who declared the Jewish origin. And today, of course, I'll be trying mostly to focus on the this last group. So we'll talk mostly about historical sources for the people of the Jewish origin. However, in the same part, we can use most of these records to track the people of the other types of the origin, Ukrainian or German origin, for example. That map is also very interesting because it shows us some of the regions where people declared not only one origin, especially in the eastern part of the pre-war Poland. There was a lot of regions where people declared, for example, Polish-Ukrainian origin, or the Polish-Belarusian origin, or Polish-Lithuanian origin, or even, especially in the southeastern part of this of the pre-war Poland, people who declared Ukrainian Czech origin. Of course, it shows us it's all about the period after 1918. But if we will be looking of the records before 20th century, like 19th century, we have to understand that most people in the historical sources didn't declare their nationality, but mostly their occupation, religions. So they declared they were Roman Catholics or Protestants or Russian Orthodox or Greek Orthodox, and this is exactly will be that type of the sources I want today to present you. So, and as usual, whenever we start our research, no matter what type of the records we'll be looking for, and no matter what information we have to get from the archives, a few important rules, like collect all information you have about these people we want to get. So checking your private archives for finding all possible documents about these people, using all available sources online from Ancestry or Family Search or MyHeritage. It's also all the time you should get a huge profit before you continue this research. Because today I'm trying to focus mostly on the people of the Jewish origin, just to share with you some of the important website tools we can use. The biggest database we should remember, and we definitely have to use, is a database of the Jewish records in Poland, jripoland.org. That project started a couple of years ago. It was just a cooperation between the head of the National Archives in Poland and Mr. Stanley Diamond, who ran the project from the site. In the time they recorded and they saved thousands of Jewish names, which now they're all available in this database. This is very important source and easy in use, and it's very intelligent database, which means that many of the various spelling types of the surnames we try to put into database, usually they should match them with all the records they have. And even if in the past the surname of your ancestors sound or spelled different, this database should match to them. However, sometimes, and just I'm talking from my own experience, sometimes it happens that family name was such a different that despite of the fact that the person were noticed by the database, they were copied the names into it, and they've been saved, and we can find them, but we didn't know exactly how it sound, for example, 19th century. So sometimes also it happens that this database can't match the record. So just to resume this, we have to use this database very often, but if you want to find by putting various types of the name of the families into the database, it doesn't mean that in 100% this record won't be found in the Polish archives. Sometimes if the database doesn't have it, then it means that it doesn't mean that we have to give up, and but we have to try maybe another method to.
And often, Rafał, you'd need to try a variety of different spellings with Jewish names in particular. Because originally they may have been written in Yiddish, then in Russian, and in Polish, and a surname like Rubinstein, for example, can be spelled in 5 different ways. And then when people immigrated, that changed again. And it's not just Jewish surname, of course, but Polish surnames are notoriously difficult for English speakers to pronounce and spell. So sometimes you have to be quite creative about how you put the name into the database, right?
Your own creativity in this research is very important. Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Yes. So the second important thing before we started, it will be really worth to learn a little about the original history. In my opinion, one of the best sources is that the website, which is run in fact by the Jewish Historical Institute, stet.org.pl, which also has its English translation in full. In that website, we can find hundreds of information about the places where the Jewish settlements were, about the local tradition, about the tangible proofs of their presence, about their heritage, and the others. It could be very important because sometimes whenever we use, for example, post-immigrated documents, where some of the, for example, a place of the birth of the person is mentioned, let's say it was Opole. Okay, and the people believe, yes, this is the town of Opole from the west, southwest part of Poland. But in fact, in the huge part of its history, there were maybe small community of Jews, or maybe even not. If there is mention Opole, probably it's Opole, but Opole Lubelskie from eastern part of Poland, a smaller town, but in historical timeline, inhabited by over 70% of the Jewish population. So there were thousands of Jewish families who once lived there. Okay, so this website will allow us to find exactly, in my opinion, the place where these people could be born. Important because sometimes we can expect to find information about the town or village, which in fact, it could be located in a various areas of the Poland or Ukraine or Belarus. So in fact, we have to find exactly the right place before we continue I remember Eva that you also had the same problem with some of the places to look to find a proper location of those people, and this is something which sometimes won't be easy, so it's good to use it. And of course, where are the records? Most of them are in the state archives. It doesn't mean, of course, that only the state archives is only one institution in Poland. You can send a request and to continue this research. But in fact, if we're talking about the Polish minorities, most of the if you're talking about the historical records, in general, they should be preserved in the state archives. However, if you try to make some combination with the research, of course, with the state archives, libraries, museums, that also will be good. What records we can use for tracking minorities in Poland? Of course, let's start from the most popular, vital records. For the Jewish population, they still could be one of the most important. And it's not because usually they provide you all information about the people we want to find them. So their age, their professions, names of the parents, sometimes great parents, the place where they lived or where they're born, or where the people were baptized, or if we're talking about Jews, of course, where was the circumcision. About the information about the local synagogues and the Jewish communities also could be found there as well. The voter records, usually if we're talking about the Jewish population, then of course definitely we have to explore the state archives. In a very characteristic archival collections, usually they should be, sounds like the voter records of the Jewish denomination or the non-Christian denomination of the city, like Czasny, Łódź, Warsaw, Radom, whatever, okay, those places where Jewish lived. The second type, also very useful for the researchers, a different type of the census records. The most interesting could be found in that part of Poland, which once was under Russian control. The books of the people residents, permanent or just temporary residents, started from the second half of the 19th century. They got a typical table form, not like the Walter records, for example, from former Russia, which these records had a more narrative form, and the census records table forms. But both of them, they are the most useful source for the researchers. The census records, like the Book of Residents, also can provide you a lot of information about all families who were registered, including also the numbers of the houses from the towns or the villages, information about the parents or great parents, information about also occupation, about the information about the age, information about especially the last column seems to be very interesting, as annotation you can find there next to every person, can tell you a lot about them, including, for example, marriages, moving to other houses, or even immigration. With the immigration, if there's information about the immigration, they could give you extra information about when exactly that happened, where those people left, or even they could provide you number of the, I don't know, for example, passports where the people have got that time. Where we can find census records for the 19th-20th century, because mostly we're talking at the moment in the 19th-20th century records in various collections of the local authorities, like the records of the cities and communes. That should be the most popular. Of course, not everywhere. It depends about how many records survived. So, for example, for the capital city of Warsaw, we can find vital records, including for the Jews, but not for all of them. About 60, maybe 65% of these records survived. And we don't, for Warsaw, for example, we don't have census records. except of few of them, which ones were not exactly a part of the Warsaw, but they were just suburb areas. They joined the Warsaw after 1916, and somehow they've never been moved into the city archive before 1944, when the city archive was destroyed. So for Warsaw, for example, we don't have a census records, but for other towns like Piaseczno, Radom, from this area of the central Mazowsze, absolutely we happen. Other types of the interesting records, mortgage books and notarial deeds, also the very interesting source for making the research of the foreign people who lived in the 19th century in Poland. And it's this type of records are basing on that institutions which have been formed in the beginning of the 19th century, and mostly they provide you a property records. As you remember, this last webinars, I was talking a little about the types of the property records and what type of information we can find from them for our research. And in my opinion, and probably Eva, you agree with me, they can provide you a lot of new facts about these people. And sometimes, if vital records or the census record do not exist, but somehow notarial deeds and mortgage books survived, it could be only one way to get something from.
Yeah. And sometimes, sorry to interrupt you there, Rafa, sometimes you do have to read between the lines to or have a number of different documents to show you a pathway to the next step. So whether it's your ancestors that you didn't know about, or you know, I don't know, property records, or if somebody's pursuing this for citizenship, something like a lease or you know, a court record can really help you pursue it further.
Yes, yes. So court records also, in fact, sometimes we could commit research for with the mortgage books and all these, and the court records is the same for many years. These types of resources were held usually in the local courts, and in many of archives we can find a really huge number of these files, and very often they could provide also the same interesting information. List of the parliament voters, interesting type of the source, and not only for the time of the independent Poland, but also before 1914, as of course local residents also voted, or for the for a local list in the Russian parliament or Austrian parliament also that happened, and this list of the list of parliament voters can be found in fact in the various types of the archival collection. There is not only one straight way to show you exactly where, but usually also we have to explore local authority records, which now of course they are held in a few types of the archival collection, the state archives. Jewish communities records, they're not very common records. And mostly what we can find of this, and where we can find it, is like this in the central archive of the historical records. This, for example, a collection named as the Central Religious Authorities of the former Polish Kingdom, which inside we can find, as if I'm not wrong, over 1,000 units, which there are just inside we can find a lot of informations, very specific files, with the papers, letters, documents of the local Jewish communities, but also Protestant communities, Russian Orthodox communities. This, for example, example on the left screen is a petition to local authorities signed by the numbers of the Jewish representatives from the local communities, including their own signatures. So from that list, for example, we can find that one of the person was a synagogue sexton, for example, the other was another important representative for the community. And sometimes on the single list like this one, we can find dozen names of these people. List of conscripts, it's also interesting extra source, very common, especially in the former part of Poland under the Russian control, but also I met the type of records in the Austrian part, the same very similar information like the census list, but this one also is only, of course, for those people who were in age between 18 to 21, usually. So they've been mentioned on the list of the conscripts made by the local authorities. And those people, of course, at the time were officially registered. Some of them just after being conscripted decided for a quick emigration, as we know from a few stories of the research projects we did recently.
Rafa, was always very fascinating, but I did want to let you know that we've only got 5 minutes left, so we'll move on. But what you're showing us is just a rich diversity of records really in Poland, because I think there's a bit of a myth. I don't know how it got perpetuated that Poland doesn't have any records, and that's actually not true. It's one of the best countries in Europe as far as records in many regards. It's just that finding records of minorities might be more challenging because they're congregated through different religious authorities, say synagogues or different churches. So again, you know, as you mentioned, you need to be creative. So let's move on with the 4 minutes we've got left. But we will go back to this topic in one of our future webinars for sure. And also people, of course, can contact us.
Yes, of course, before I move on and tell a little more about the other types of the records, maybe not so very typical. Now I want to tell you more especially unique records, which could be found only in specific archives. Of course, for finding this type of the most characteristic for the researchers records, how do we make this research? How we can track our family roots? Of course, all of you can make your own research in the Polish state archives. You can visit the state archives, the reading room. You can also mail with them and expect very often real success for getting these documents. A lot of records have their digital forms and are now available on the search in archives.gov.pl. Of course, remember this site, as usually we use them for getting not only documents in the digital forms, but also all archival evidence is available there, and it's a easier way to learn and to find exactly a proper archival collection there.
And Rafael, this database that you're showing us the link to on the screen, that's really extensive, and it is not so easy to use. I remember when, I think 2018, they've changed the interface and the way you search. So if you are looking through this, I think there are, you can switch to English, you can switch the language to English, but nevertheless, you do need to spend a bit of time to learn how it works, and then looking for records. Yeah.
Even if you change into the English, you know, it's only translate you some of not everything.
Yeah, not everything's translated. Yeah.
So yes, general information will be translated in English or in German, but evidence will be still in Polish language.
Yes, okay? Yes. So you still need to, and sometimes the records.
how they use the website. It's still don't tell you exactly. It won't translate the Polish collections, which could be only written in Polish language.
Of course, many of them are not even in Polish. They might be in Russian or German or Latin. And so, but I think most of people that are watching are very passionate about family history, and maybe they have time, because time is another thing that you need here. 1 minute left, Rafał.
Oh, only 1 minute? Okay, just so I'll try to be very quick. Interwar period provide us completely new information, and especially when the new institutions were formed, like Polish central authorities, government institutions, Polish embassies and consulates, they created a new types of the records, which I hope that one day I'll find more time to show you better examples today. But a new personal surveys, for example, people who just declared that they want to get new documents, passports, IDs, so they left the personal surveys, you know, with the with a lot of great information inside. There is something which definitely can improve our research and provide us absolutely new information about these people. Records, new records were created after 1918. Also, in the time of the German occupation, and when the ghettos were established in many towns, not from every town the Jewish ghetto records survived, but if they survived, they will, trust me, they could provide you a lot of great information. Of course, the time was horrible, okay? But at the same time, a lot of new documents about the people who were transferred to the ghetto were created. And if it will be interesting to find the type of the also like personal surveys, we have to understand that the names of the archival collections could be completely different. Przełożony Starszeństwa Żydów, Zarząd Getta, Naczelna Rada Starszych is only one of the few examples. That could be definitely more. Not from every town. For example, for Warsaw, we don't have that records like this one of the card on this presentation, but like from Litzmannstadt in Łódź or Radom ghetto or Lublin, there is definitely more. After 1945, we can expect also completely new records. The most important, in my opinion, are the repatriation records. And one more important thing. Over 1 million personal surveys can be found in the Central Archive of the Modern Records in the Central Repatriation Office. But also there is a numbers of the regional repatriation offices, which means the records could be preserved in the regional archives like Wrocław, Szczecin, Poznań, so all the towns where
people settled,
points
after
exactly.
The war. Rafał, we out of time, unfortunately, but what a fascinating journey. And I think what we'll do, and it's also very late where you are, so I don't want to hold you up, but what we'll do and I'm speaking to everyone that's attended, we might continue this conversation again because we've not quite finished. There's so much to cover. And as Rafał says, for Jewish people, one other source of information would be religious authorities or rabbis. Every town had a rabbi, as Rafał said. And next time we meet, we'll also cover the other minorities. So I wanted to thank everybody for attending. I did put my email in the chat there if anyone wants to reach out, and Rafał's also available. His contact details you can see on the screen, and also you can go to our website to see his direct email address. More than happy to explore this topic. It sounds like there was a lot of interest. So Rafał, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. It's always very, very fascinating. And we'll see you next time, and we'll explore this a bit more.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, everyone.